If you're the kind of person who has way too many things on your to-do list and you're not too sure where to start, then this layout may be for you. Hello team, it's Jess or Jashi Corinne on behalf of the Artronolove Ambassador team, and today we're having a look at the Prioritization Matrix, or effectively a layout that you can use to help you prioritize what to do next. Technically speaking, this one doesn't just have to be used for prioritizing tasks. You can also use it if you want to prioritize things like book rankings, if you like to record what books you're reading and want to rank your best books at the end of the year. The nice part about this one, compared to a book bracket, is that the book bracket really only tells you your top 1, whereas this one gives you a more definitive ranking of your top 10, or however many that you decide to put on. Before we get to using the layout though, we do need to set it up, so let's wipe this slate clean and start again. I'm starting by putting in a header. It's not super necessary, it's just that this is an ideas video, so we want to give it a label. And then we get straight into drawing the main functionality of the spread, which is the prioritization matrix itself. This is effectively a triangular shaped grid, I guess you could say, which has 10 columns and 12 rows of 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter boxes. In your Artronolove notebook, this is super easy to set up because each of the grid spacings is just half a centimeter, so we take 2 of those for either side of each box. In setting up your grid though, we're not drawing out a full square grid. Instead, we're having this kind of triangular step down going from left to right. So the leftmost column has all 12 boxes, whereas the next one only has 11, the next one has 10, so on and so forth. I've also included a little additional box at the bottom right. That one is 3 centimeters wide by 1 centimeter down, and that's just going to be for a totals label. It'll make a little bit more sense when we actually get to using the layout. In terms of the grid, I've decided to rule it up. You can just freehand it. I just find that I like to use these kind of layouts if they look a little bit neater, so I personally prefer a ruler. And this is the kind of layout that you can use time and time again, so I want it to look as neat as possible, so I'm more inclined to come back and actually use it. Once the grid's drawn in though, we do have to label it. So on each of those step downs, going from the top left to the bottom right, we're going to write an initial, and I'm just using the letters of the alphabet, going from A to J. Once the stepwise part has been labeled though, then we also have to label the row underneath this. This is also going to get A through J. Again, this might look a little bit weird, but I promise it'll make more sense when we actually use the layout. And then in that 3 centimeter box on the side, we're just going to write totals. At this stage, the page is looking a little barren, but we have a couple more things to add. First, we're going to want to add another functional space, and this is 2 columns of 5 dots. These are going to be where we're going to put the prioritized tasks or books or whatever you're using the layout for. And because the top corner was looking a little barren, we're also adding in some decoration. This isn't necessary, but I just like it. Now as the layout's set up though, we can actually use it. So as said, this is the prioritization matrix. It's going to help us prioritize things we need to do. And each of these letters or initials is going to represent one of the things we need to do. The nice part is we have a good amount of space beside this to actually write in what those tasks are. So we can go in and label those with the specifics of what we have to get done. You can see I'm using a pencil here because as said, I want this layout to be reusable. If I use a pencil, it means once I'm done with it, I can erase all of the markings that I've put in and then save the layout for future use. Once we've got all of these tasks in though, then it's time to have them battle head to head. So we're effectively trying to pit them against each other to see which one is more important in that kind of pairing. It's a little bit easier to deal with a 1 versus 1 case rather than all 10 of these at once. So for instance, we do A versus B, so washing the windows versus finishing a blog post. Maybe finishing the blog post is more important. So in this box here, so A versus B, we would write B because B was more important. We can then do the same for each of the other head-to-head battles. So A versus C, washing windows versus selling the old table. Maybe selling the old table is more important. The table is an eyesore, we need to get rid of it. It's just taking up space in our living room. So we can write C in that box to say C is more important. We then just have to do this for all of the different combinations. This can take a little bit of time when you're first getting used to it, but as you use the prioritization matrix more, you're going to get into quite a good rhythm with deciding which one's more important with the 1 versus 1. Like said, it's often much easier to pick the most important out of 2 options rather than picking the most important out of 10, or at least getting a definitive ranking of the 10. Once we've finished filling in all of the letters for the majority of the matrix, then we need to do the totals row. So this is just about counting out how many times we see A, how many times we see B, C, so on and so forth. So in terms of how many times A appeared in this matrix, we actually have 0 instances of A. That's already telling me that maybe A isn't all that important. If we have a look for B though, so we just need to count up through this column. So 1, 2, 3, and then across from B as well, so that's 4. We have 4 instances of B. For C, we count up through this column, so 1, and then across from C here, 2, so 2 instances of C. For D, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that one's looking kind of important. It showed up 7 times. And then we just do that for the rest of them. In a perfect world, each number that you're writing down will only appear once. But often as we work through the matrix, we're not necessarily going to assign the 1 versus 1 priorities perfectly to make that happen. This does though give us a very good indication of what our most important tasks are. So any of the ones that have the highest number, those are the ones that have appeared the most in the head-to-head. They are the most important tasks. So for us, that is a count of 9 for F, and F was paying the bills. So that is going to be the first thing that we do. We can write that down in the number 1 slot. The second most important was H with a score of 8. So that is to call mum. Very important. After this, we go to 7, which was D, and D was doing the laundry, so we can put that one down as our third thing to do. And then ideally, our next number would be 6, but we don't actually have a 6. Instead, we have 2 5s. So we have E being tidying the office, and I being book the appointment. If we go and have a look at I versus E, so we decided in that case that E was more important. So we can put E down first, being tidy the office. And then after that, we can put an I being book the appointment. After 5, we would then ideally have only 1 4, but we have 2. We have J being the drying, and B being finishing the blog post. If we have a look at B versus J here, J came out on top, so it's drying first, and then the blog post. Effectively though, we just have to work through each of those totals, going from the most to the least, to order the priorities of our different tasks. As said, the nice part about using pencil is that we can just erase this once we've got our definitive ranking and use it again next time. And as said, you can use this for other things, not just tasks. So you can use it to rank like favorite movies, favorite books. If you have a couple of different options for dinner and you're trying to figure out which one you want to do, you can put them head to head and figure out which one's going to be best. But it can make for a really helpful addition to your journal. If this kind of layout sounds useful to you, but you didn't want to have to set it up for yourself, then you can get a free downloadable version at the blog post linked in the description box. That one's worth checking out next. Otherwise, if you wanted to stay here and watch some more videos, then either of these two would be a good next option.